Welcome back to another explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this. Today, I need you to put on your executive advisor hat because we're looking at one of the most deceptively simple yet absolutely critical decisions a business leader will ever make. We're talking about the make or break choice of where exactly to put the company.
So think about it. What actually happens when a growing business just runs out of room? Or even worse, what if they choose the completely wrong spot right out of the gate? Honestly, it's a scenario that literally keeps CEOs awake at night. Whether you're just starting up a brand new venture or you're this established giant whose current location just isn't cutting it anymore, maybe because of rising costs or a shifting environment, the stakes are incredibly high. A geographical miscalculation doesn't just mean a longer commute for your team. It leads to massive, crippling costs and a devastating loss of sales.
Here's our roadmap for today's masterclass. We're going to cover the make or break choice, makers and materials, services and retail rules, going global for growth, the government's invisible hand, and finally, we'll wrap up with the ultimate location test.
All right, Section 1, the make or break choice, why location is everything.
You see, this isn't just about finding a building with a nice view or scoring a cheap lease. A location mistake fundamentally bleeds your money and drives away your customers. It's an absolutely critical management decision, usually driven by a business's need to grow or adapt to its environment. Look, you could have the most incredible, groundbreaking product on earth, but if you set up shop in a place that drives your operational costs through the roof or completely cuts you off from your target market, you will go bankrupt. It's really that simple.
Moving on to Section 2, makers and materials, rules for the manufacturing sector. Now, if you're out there building physical products, you have to play by some heavy, messy rules, mainly because your specific production methods completely dictate your geography. Let's say your factory uses job production, making small, custom, one-off items. Well, you've got some flexibility there. But if you're using large-scale flow production, particularly a just-in-time or JIT inventory system, all that flexibility just vanishes. JIT means your components arrive exactly when they are needed on the assembly line, right that second. You can't just sit around waiting for a truck driving across the country. That system demands that your component suppliers are located instantly nearby. We're talking practically right next door.
And this brilliantly illustrates the constant battle between the weight of your raw materials and your final market. Think about weight-losing products versus weight-gaining products. The actual physical weight of what you're making completely dictates your location. For example, if you process ore, the raw material is incredibly heavy and full of waste rock. So naturally, you want to process that right next to the mine so you aren't paying a fortune to ship useless dirt. That's a weight-losing product. But on the flip side, think about fizzy drinks. The raw syrup is super light, but the finished product? That's heavy because you add a ton of water to it. That's a weight-gaining product. Therefore, it makes total sense to build your bottling plant right next to your customers, your market, to save on the massive delivery fees of shipping all that heavy water.
But hey, it's not just about what you make, it's about what keeps the lights on, right? A modern factory absolutely requires a rock-solid, reliable electricity supply to avoid those crippling, super costly blackouts. And for the real heavy hitters out there, like power stations, they require massive amounts of water just for cooling their systems down. We're talking millions of gallons a day. For them, they don't even have a choice. They literally have to build right next to a major river or the sea.
Which brings us to Section 3, services and retail rules, where the customer is king.
All right, we are officially leaving the messy factory floor and stepping into the consumer-facing world. Service businesses are different. They don't make physical items, they provide tasks or expertise. If you're setting up a hair salon, or you're a plumber, or a dentist, you fall into the direct contact category. And here, proximity to the customer is the absolute most important factor, period. If you aren't convenient, well, your customers are just going to go somewhere else. But contrast that with no direct contact businesses. Thanks to IT and the internet, folks like website designers, call centers, and bank support services, they never actually need to see their customers face-to-face.
And that lack of direct contact creates a really fascinating phenomenon. These businesses become what's called footloose, which is just a great term. It basically gives them ultimate geographical freedom. Because they don't rely on foot traffic, they can locate absolutely anywhere in the country or, honestly, even abroad. So, what's their primary location strategy? Simply hunting down the absolute cheapest rent and the lowest taxes they can find to save a buck.
Retailers, however, are a whole different story. They sell physical goods directly to consumers in physical shops, meaning they have to follow some pretty strict survival rules. First up, target shoppers. You absolutely must match your location to your customer base.
Think about it. A luxury shoe boutique needs a wealthy city center, while a souvenir shop needs a bustling tourist trap. Second rule, nearby competitors. And this is wild. Sometimes your absolute best move is opening up right next door to your biggest rival. Shoe shops and clothing boutiques cluster together specifically because it draws massive crowds to the exact same street. Or, alternatively, you might just look for a complete gap in the market. Finally, the third rule is security. High crime means sky-high insurance, or maybe no insurance at all. Retailers will gladly pay way higher rent just to be in a secure, guarded shopping plaza to avoid vandalism and theft.
Section 4. Going global for growth. Expanding overseas. Let's move to this and see how it builds on everything we've talked about.
So, when medium and large businesses decide to expand overseas, it usually boils down to four main reasons. Take new markets, for example. Starbucks expanded rapidly throughout Argentina simply because selling directly in a fast-growing foreign country is so much more cost-effective than shipping from thousands of miles away. Then there's lower labor. Textile companies routinely move their assembly plants to places like Vietnam to drastically reduce their total wage expenses. And then we have this crucial one, tariffs. Japanese car companies famously bypass massive EU import taxes by, well, just building their factories directly inside Europe. It's a brilliant workaround. Finally, resources. Oil companies, for instance, don't really get a say in the matter. They literally have to build their wells where the oil reserves actually are.
Moving to Section 5. The government's invisible hand. How the state shapes your choice.
Here's the twist, though. It isn't entirely up to the business owner. Governments actively intervene to dictate exactly where you can and cannot do business. They basically use a dual approach. Step 1 is planning regulations. Think of this as the shield. These are strict laws that'll outright block your planning permission if, say, you try to build a massive, noisy, polluting chemical factory right next to a quiet housing estate or a protected national park. Makes sense, right? Step 2, on the other hand, is grants and subsidies. This is the magnet. Governments will actually offer non-repayable money or incredibly low-rent facilities as financial incentives. Why? Specifically to tempt businesses into relocating to regions that are suffering from high unemployment. They want to bring jobs to the areas that need them most.
And finally, Section 6. The ultimate location test. The D&D football's dilemma.
All right, we've covered the rules. Now let's actually apply this theory to reality and put you in the hot seat with a bit of a high-stakes scenario. Imagine you're advising D&D Footballs, which is a manufacturer of high-quality sports equipment. In your home country, wages have just shot up by an agonizing 20% over the last 2 years. Ouch. However, your international sales are absolutely booming. The problem is, your current factory is way too small, and the board of directors is forcing a massive, immediate decision on where to build the new one.
So, you're faced with two choices. Option A, you lean into expensive automation and rely on the highly skilled managers you already have in your home country. Or, Option B, you go for massive wage savings by moving to a developing nation, but you'll be plagued by logistical nightmares and a total lack of skilled managers. So, which do you choose? What's your grand strategy to save the company? As you chew on that, think about everything we've covered today, from the sheer weight of your materials to JIT delivery to government tariffs. And honestly, take a look at the businesses in your own neighborhood tomorrow. Ask yourself, why exactly did they choose to build right where they did? It's like a giant puzzle happening right under our noses. Think about it.